A really, really violent childhood. Not me personally, but there's a lot of violence in my family. Father was an alcoholic. Mom was a little bit for a while. I have a brother who was a real heavy drug addict and went to Catholic school too, so Catholic military school. I matured very, very, very early. My friends, like all the way up through, well, 5th or 6th grade, I always liked people who were older than me because I could relate to them a little bit better. I didn't ever relate to people my own age. When I was really, really young, even when we lived in Cleveland, it was still, our house was like really violent. We still had horses. We'd board them out in the country, and I loved horses, and I was so obsessed with horses and animals and stuff that I actually taught myself to read by 1st grade. And so I would read everything I could get my hands on about horses, and then I started getting interested in like whales and marine life and stuff. And I was, oh my God, it was an escape for me. My grandparents raised us. They were from Pennsylvania. Grandpa was a coal miner. Grandma was a coal miner's wife. Just the old hillbilly story from the Midwest. But we grew up on a farm. After we left Cleveland, we left when I was like in 5th grade. I think it was 12 or 13. We left and moved to the country. We had horses, goats, chickens and stuff. So I was the worker in the house. I took care of everything, managed the livestock and whatnot. So I was taught very early, even from a little kid, like you work hard. My grandparents instilled that in us. You work hard, no matter what. It's housework, it's anything. You just work hard. You put your nose in the dirt and you get it done. My brother and I, we would have like WWF weekends or nights. We like 5-10 girls would come over, 5-10 guys, and we put all our names in a paper bag and like, okay, who's gonna fight who? It was straight up MMA. Like, but we were watching this on TV thinking, oh wow, watch this. And we would do it. You know, it wasn't play wrestling. I mean, we were trying to tear each other up. So it's not really a martial art, but that was our first fighting experience when I would say we were probably maybe 11 or 12. My brother was probably like 9 or 10, something like that. And we would, I mean, literally throw down all over the house, out in the field, out in the front yard, in the hayloft. We'd have we used to call them Lana Paloozas. We'd have everybody come over and everybody would just fight everybody, guys versus girls. And you pick a name out of a hat. You know, guy's gonna beat the hell out of a girl, girl's gonna beat the hell out of a guy. Not bad, not like bloody knuckles and stuff, but I mean really rough wrestling and rough housing. So it's not really martial art, but that's our first fighting, and it started real early. After that, my brother started getting into like Kempo and Taekwondo, point sparring. By that time, I was midway through high school. I tried it a little bit, and I'm like, this is kind of, you know, shady, kind of whatever. High school was kind of rough for me because my home life, my mom and dad used to fight really bad. It was really violent. My one particular brother who was, you know, he's like I said in prison. He was really violent, and it created like a huge problem in our house. It was a point where I was a straight A student and on a roll all the time, and then when my brother was living at home and he was in and out of jail all these times, it made our life so hostile and so crazy and so out of control that school was very difficult. I would skip school a lot. I would just go to a friend's house to sleep, and I mean, I appeared to be really bad because I would skip school all the time and had this attitude, but I wasn't a bad person. You know how you have like weightlifting in high school where they have the football team there and stuff, and guys are benching like 150, 175, something like that, right? I was like, that doesn't look that heavy. So I see these guys over there, hee-hawing it up, and I was like, well, the bale of hay is like 60, 70 pounds. If I can carry 2 in each arm, I double the stress. I could probably do that. So I walked over there. I said, let me try this. And I was stronger than most of the dudes. So naturally, I was like, whoa, I'm good at this. I might as well get better. How I got my anger and frustration out was I worked hard. You know, when you slapping hot tar roofs around and you're doing residential, commercial, industrial roofing, you don't really have time to think, well, what can I tear up next? You know, it's like, and I tried to stay real good with my life. I tried real hard because I saw everything that happened to my family. I just didn't want that. By the time I hit college, I was still interested in actually learning some sort of proper or good fighting technique. So I started doing Aikido. I did Aikido for a couple of years at Lakeland College with Linda Lee Vecchio. This crazy, shredded up woman, obviously roided out to the gills. She was like, hey, you know, I have this fight in Pennsylvania. Like, let me get your email, this, that, and the other. I'm like, a fight? So she emails me later on. She's like, my name's Anna, you know, if you want to fight me, there's this club in the Poconos, give you $5,000, bare knuckle, bare fight. I'm like, $5,000? Holy shit, that's a lot of money. I'm like, oh my God, fight. And then I got offended. I'm like, why would she want to fight me? That's mean. You know, that's just rude. You want to fight me? I thought, how bar attitude. Then I got pissed off, and I'm like, well, that's a lot of money. You know, I said, well, so I emailed her back. I said, yeah, I'll do it. When is it? And she gave me this date, like 2-3 months ahead, you know. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So I started looking up fight schools, and there weren't that many. Maybe 1 or 2 to choose from. One, really, was Griffin Roll. So I started training. I just started doing Muay Thai there, wrestling. And one day, this guy walks in, Donald Park. He's a black belt now under Hoyler. Donald Park walks in. He's showing this jiu-jitsu. We were grappling. He said, "Hey, who wants to roll?" And I'm like, "What does that mean? Like, we're going to roll or roll?" You know, like, I'm like, and he's like, "Anybody want to roll?" So this guy goes, steps up. His name is Dom. Really huge guy. He's like 220 pounds, like 6'2". And I'm like, oh my God, this little dude, he looks like Bruce Lee. He's all 5'6", 5'7", you know, probably 150 pounds soaking wet. And this guy's like 225 pounds. I'm like, oh, he's going to kill him. This is so funny. Oh my God. I'm like, is he really? This is like WWF again in the living room. So the guy comes out in his Muay Thai stuff, squares up with Donald. Donald looks at him, smiles. And the guy goes like, he's ready to start throwing. Donald arm drags him, runs up his leg, takes his back, chokes him out standing. Went. I said, no. I'm like, this guy's going to kill this little dude, right? And I'm like, and I watched, I said, oh my God, this is crazy. And of course, it was after class. He showed an arm bar and he showed a rear naked choke. I'm like, this is stupid. If anybody does this to me, I'm just going to go like this and, you know, shake him off and punch him, right? You know, if anybody tries to choke me, I'm just going to pull their arms off. That's dumb. Who would tap? That's just silly. And I remember watching in my little Muay Thai shorts, and I'm like, wow, this. And I watched him roll with a few more people. I'm like, wow, he's doing something there. And I can't exactly see what he's doing. It's definitely not punching and kicking, but I can see that this might be effective. And he's tearing these guys up that I thought were studs, you know. And I'm like, So I walked up to him after class. He was a purple belt at the time. And I said, hey, do you teach anyplace else? I remember the first night, I'm just like, my heart stopped in my chest. And I remember my first submission I got was an arm bar. And then I got a choke. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh, to hell with Muay Thai. So I literally stopped doing Muay Thai almost altogether. I started training at Evolution, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a Hoyler school. Then I found a Health and Gracie school with my brother. I'm like, Mark, no, listen, because he was taking Japanese Jiu-Jitsu or combat Jiu-Jitsu sort of at Lakeland College also. I'm like, no, Mark, there's this, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. No, Mark, no, let go of that other stuff. This is the stuff right here. Oh boy, and then, I don't know about that. I'm like, no, Mark, it's awesome. It's real. Because we were always looking for the real one. Because, you know, I kept waiting for Aikido to get better. I kept waiting for Kempo to become that magic bullet. I kept waiting for Taekwondo. Oh, yeah, I'm waiting for Taekwondo. You know, it's like, none of this shit works. It's hard, and that's how you know it's good. Because it wasn't like, oh, just do this, and you're done. You know, and I realized, I'm like, this is the real thing. There's no bullshit about it. You get it or you don't. And you know you got it when you get it, because you can prove it. I spent years doing, like, not years in a row, but like years doing, like, you know, playing with Kempo, Aikido, a little bit of Taekwondo. I played with all that, and when I started doing Muay Thai, that was real, because like you're gonna get beat up or you're gonna beat someone up, and that seemed real to me. It was still sort of violent, but it was beautiful because there was a huge element of work to it, and then there was a huge element of growth, and same with jiu-jitsu. I mean, there's this huge element of work and this huge element of growth. So again, that's why it was so appealing to me, because it made sense. Like, the more you learn, the more you learn. When you're growing up in a really bad place or in a hostile environment or a violent place, the lessons, the pain that you feel and the humility that you feel, there's usually no reward for that. In jiu-jitsu, when you fight and when you train, the pain and humility you feel make you a better person, because that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to teach you that you're going to get beat up, but you can get right back up. You're going to get choked out, you're going to tap today, but you might go on to win worlds tomorrow. So when you come up in a horrible place, there's no reward out of that. You don't get an award for surviving a house that I came out of. You don't get an award for having rotten parents and then turning out okay. You don't get an award for having a murdering, raping brother, and you are not that. You don't get an award for that. Those have to be self-imposed. So my first tournament, I think, was Health and Gracie, the Pro-Am tournament, which was in Ohio. I won that. I won my division, the absolute white belt. And then as a fourth stripe white belt, I think the year later I went back and I won the advanced Nogi. And then I qualified pro as a white belt. So then shortly after I got my blue belt, I think that was like 2003 or 4 or something like that. And then I ended up getting my blue belt, went on to win Pan Americans that year. I tapped everybody out, beat everybody like in under a minute. And then I just started, so as a blue belt, I had my first pro fight. I literally, my blue belt was so new, it was like the ears were sticking straight up. So my brother didn't like it, so he's like, oh, you're not gonna wear that blue belt at Pan Americans. He's like, here, take mine. So as a blue belt, that was, I think it was, might have been 2003 or 4 or 5, I can't remember honestly, but that was my first pro fight in Oakland here at the Oracle. I had fought Martha Salazar. She's a boxer. So, and we were the first ever CAC commissioned female fight. People are like, no, that's not true, but there was this person. No, that was on a reservation. This was the first athletic commission fight. When my mom found out, she was, oh, you're not that type of person. You're going to get your ass kicked. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you're not an asshole. That person's an asshole. That person's an asshole. Those are fighters. Because, you know, that's the mentality. Fighters are assholes. They're violent, aggressive people. And my mom said, you're not that way. You're going to get hurt. You know, and she flew out to see it. She flew out to see the fight, and she sat in the front row. And I remember when Martha came walking out, the fight was only like 50 seconds or something, and ended up standing guillotine her. And I looked over at my mom, and my mom was like, and then when they raised my hand, she jumped up and down and screamed. So even though she hated it, and was like, you are not fighting, blah, blah, blah. Every fight that she could come to afterwards, she was always there. And she was just, because they treated her so cool, because after I won Pan Ams, I started winning a lot. I never lost white to black belt. So my mom was so proud. She'd take all these little news clippings and grappling magazines. Oh, that's my daughter, you know. So suddenly this heinous thing that I was fighting, that I was doing, now she was, you know, getting a little bit of recognition for it herself. So she really appreciated it. Even my father started watching it. My dad's like 72 years old. And he's at home watching MMA.
Now, what does that mean to you? What did it mean to you to have them like recognize what you were doing?
It was massive, because my whole life they really didn't recognize too much. My life is jiu-jitsu and was jiu-jitsu. MMA was just something to help me pay my bills.
Okay.
MMA wasn't like, oh God, MMA. Because to me, MMA was just a small brick in the wall of jiu-jitsu. And as we know, it's kind of the opposite. MMA is this thing, and then there's wrestling, there's Muay Thai, there's this, there's jiu-jitsu, there's all sorts of bricks in that wall. But for me, and even now, like even after, how many years, almost 15 years later, as I look back, like in the last 15 years, there's really been nothing but jiu-jitsu for me. MMA, I was very good at it, and I got a bunch of titles and stuff, but undefeated and everything. But for me, MMA wasn't the best thing in life. For me, it's jiu-jitsu, because I feel like I was born for jiu-jitsu, and I figured that I'm going to die in jiu-jitsu. You're not born for MMA, and you're not going to die in MMA. Your spark it's like a sparkler, it's like, oh, great. But jiu-jitsu is like the Roman candle. It's like 30 feet tall. It's going to burn as long as you don't blow it out. In 2009, for example, when I fought Kira in the finals and then Luca Diaz in the finals, that to me was larger than life, because that was important to me. A lot of people, they live differently than I am. People live, I always say, like, I live in this world, but I'm not of this world. What other people hold important, they want to be famous, they want to be rich, they want to have money. That to me, that's not important at all. And everybody, like, money is important, don't get me wrong. You want to be comfortable and you don't want to be starving to death. But I think that people have their values completely wrong, and their priorities completely upside down, inside out, and completely incorrect. So for me, MMA was just a way for me to show the world my jiu-jitsu. It wasn't for me to become famous and be the best fighter in the world, because I already knew, like, I was probably the best anyhow, and that's not being cocky, it's being real. Initially, like I said, I hated it. I was like, this is violence. I hated boxing. I hated football because it was too violent. I'm not a violent person. I'm not combative. I don't have anger issues. Like, I get angry, but I mean, I deal with my stuff. Like, I always move forward. I always read a lot. I write a lot. I just study things. Like, I think constant growth is really, really important. I'm very tough, and that's like the biggest compliment that I can give myself. I'm tough. I don't ever quit. And for me, I think the one thing I like about myself the most, if that's what you're asking, the one thing I like about myself the most is that I can go through anything and not come out awesome, but no matter how hard things get, I always get through it. And especially in jiu-jitsu, like, it teaches you that. You laying on your back when you got a 300-pound dude laying on you, crushing, what's the worst that can happen? You're going to break my ribs, you're going to snap my arm, I'm going to pass out, I might tap. That's the worst that's going to happen. For me, there's no such thing as the worst that can happen, because in my life, the worst that can happen has happened. I watched the person I love the most die painfully. I watched my other person I love die painfully. I watched my friends die at young ages. I watched my loved ones almost kill each other, beat each other, stab each other. The worst that can happen to me has happened to me. So, without sounding bizarre or crazy, like, it kind of put me somewhere else. And I say, like, I live in this world, but I'm not of this world. Like, what's important to you is not important to me at all. And I'm not, some sort of hippie or nothing, but what's important to me, I know, is peace, love, and your character. And for me, that's what jiu-jitsu builds. My younger brother, Mark, he's a black belt also in jiu-jitsu under Helson Gracie, and he's a police officer in Ohio. And I'll tell you what my brother said he was most proud of me for. It wasn't for going white to black belt in 3 years or 4 years, whatever it was. It wasn't for going undefeated from white to black. It wasn't, being 6-0 in MMA and having 3 or 4 titles. And it wasn't winning worlds against Kira Gracie. My brother will tell anybody, and he even said this when the police department called him. They said, what are you most proud of her for? And I expected him to say something like, oh, she's a great black belt, or, He said, I'm most proud of her for the 4 months that she took out of her life to take care of my mother who was dying, and she was at her side for 24/7. I said, that's more important to me than any black belt, gold medal, anything ever she could have done.